If we think in terms of the broad ancient Near Eastern world, it's clear there were many goddesses. We know of that from Mesopotamia, we know of goddesses from Egypt. And the biblical texts themselves attest to the existence and the worship of goddesses by Israelites. One very interesting text is Jeremiah 41, and it refers to the Queen of Heaven. And it's a very interesting text because the Queen of Heaven's worshippers are actually allowed to defend their beliefs, to explain why it is that they worship the Queen of Heaven. And that's very unusual within the biblical text. Usually non-worshippers of Yahweh are not given the opportunity to express or to justify their beliefs in another deity and their worship of another deity. Where particular controversy has tended to develop is around the question of whether in fact there was a goddess Asherah who was worshipped in Israel, and whether Asherah was the wife or the consort of Yahweh, the God of Israel. And that's a very difficult question to answer. One quite important text is a text that was discovered in the 1970s in the wilderness south of Israel in a place called Kuntlet Ashurut. And the text talks about Yahweh and his Asherah. And the question is whether we have here a divine couple. The difficulty is that, as you can hear even in the Hebrew, even get a sense in English, it's a little bit odd to talk about his Asherah. It could well be that this Asherah, Yahweh's Asherah, is in fact a cult object. It is something that was used in the worship in a temple. We find that particularly in the book of Deuteronomy. There are references to the Asherah, and the Asherah there is a cultic object. It's perhaps a living tree or a pole that was used in cultic worship. And it seems most likely, therefore, that Yahweh and his Asherah is a reference to this cultic object. That still leaves open the possibility that that cultic object was a representation, was some form of image of the goddess. But that would be a difficult question to ascertain exactly whether that was the case. People often like to talk about Asherah being airbrushed out of the biblical text. And there are some biblical texts where that may well be the case, but the picture is often more complex. There is also some text where Asherah has probably been airbrushed into the picture. So there are some very late texts in the book of Judges and in the book of Kings that talk about Asherah and Baal together. And Asherah here is now being associated with Baal. And Asherah is therefore being associated as something that is evil, as is inappropriate for Israelites to worship. So we have a complicated picture in the Old Testament. Asherah is both perhaps airbrushed out, but also in certain places also airbrushed into the biblical text.